Right. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Gears. My name's Grayson Harris. That's Whitney Cowell.
Hey.
And we're joining you from a new location this time around. We're down in Augusta, Georgia, for the open house of a new office location
Yeah.
for our friends down here in Augusta. So we're having a great time down here. It's been a really cool city so far. I've never been, and you've been here
Yeah,
before,
I've been
right?
here before.
Okay. All I knew about it was the Masters. There seems to be a lot more going on than that, though, which is cool. So, even though we are in Augusta, the first story is actually going to be taking us right back to Chattanooga, Tennessee. We just can't get away from home. So Chattanooga has really, for the past decade or so, cemented themselves as a freight hub
Yeah.
in the United States, and its location is strategic and very beneficial for that. It's really right in the center of what's called Freight Alley. So Freight Alley, kind of think of it as like basically the same area as the Bible Belt. It's like that same little,
Okay.
I mean,
You're not wrong.
however you want to think about it. Yeah, it's about that same area. So it's southeastern U.S., covering states like Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. Uh, Roughly 37 million people inhabit this region, and this part's hilarious to me. I did not know this was true. The entire GDP for this area, just Georgia, Alabama, Carolinas, Tennessee, stands at 1.75 trillion, which is more than Canada, which is wild.
Sure.
Yeah. So even more on their economic influence, this entire area of Freight Alley is home to some of the biggest transportation companies in the world, like FedEx, UPS. They chose this area as their home base for good reason. Freight Alley itself hosts over 50 $20 million plus asset based truckload carriers.
Yeah.
And despite only having about 11.5% of the US population in that area, Freight Alley itself handles a significant chunk of the nation's freight. Everything goes through there.
Yeah.
It receives about 14% of all the nation's freight, and 17% of all the freight in the US originates from that area. So it either gets shipped there or it gets shipped out of there. Either way, it's going to be going through that area in one way or another.
Freight in Chattanooga is the equivalent of layovers in Atlanta. It
Yes.
just always happens.
It's always happening.
You always go through that area.
Yeah, that region alone employs about 1.25 million people in transportation. You're looking at two of them right now, including 230,000 truck drivers. That is a lot of truck drivers.
A ton of drivers.
Just in that one area, again. Also, did not know, this is another cool stat, this area produces more cars than Detroit, like twice as many as Detroit. Chattanooga itself, though, is what most people consider to be the center of Freight Alley. Like if there is a capital of, if Freight Alley was a company or a country, Chattanooga would be the capital of said country.
Yeah.
So Chattanooga itself is located literally right in the middle of Freight Alley. It's a pivotal hub for freight movement there. The city's location itself is very responsible for this. It's right in the intersections of three major interstates, I-75, I-24, and I-59. If you live in Chattanooga, you understand that you are in the intersection.
You are in the crossfires.
You are, you're not getting away from the traffic in that particular scenario. 80%, this is wild, 80% of the nation's freight travels through Chattanooga. Just Chattanooga, not Freight Alley.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane.
It is. Yeah. I mean, that's a massive amount of traffic that we're seeing come through. And I don't mean traffic just like road traffic. I mean, there's cargo. Rail as well that comes through. So it's becoming more and more popular. And so naturally, I think part of what's making it look more and be recognized more and more as Freight Alley is now we're seeing the supportive roles of freight start moving their businesses and their headquarters, like us as a 3PL being in Freight Alley. And we're seeing technology headquarters start either migrating or launching. So it's also, Chattanooga is huge for startups and young companies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny you bring that up, actually. Chattanooga itself boasts more truckload brokerages, like 3PL, stuff like that, per capita than any other U.S. city.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And I like the way, so Freight Caviar, the team over at Freight Caviar.
Hey, Freight Caviar.
What's up, guys? Good to see y'all again. They came through and did a tour of Chattanooga for this exact reason, to go check out basically the capital of freight and to see what all the fuss is about, right? And something that they said really resonated with me. I think it puts into perspective what Chattanooga is. This is a quote from their newsletter a couple of days ago. At the end of March, we visited Charlotte, Chattanooga, Louisville, and Chicago. One of the highlights of the tour was definitely Chattanooga. The city literally revolves around freight. Oftentimes, you hear debates between Chicago and Chattanooga, who is the reigning freight capital of the U.S. As we all know, the capital of the U.S., Washington, D.C., is not the largest city in the States, but as soon as you go there, you feel like it's the capital. Mm-hmm. Everything revolves around politics. In a way, I felt the same in Chattanooga. It may not have as many freight employees as Chicago, but everything in Chattanooga revolves around freight. And I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Especially, I live like pretty much right in the heart of downtown, and no matter which direction I'm looking, I can probably see some sort of transportation, freight-based something. Yep. They're all over the place. It is absolutely part of our nature in Chattanooga. So they actually, Freight Caviar just posted their tour of Chattanooga on their YouTube channel. Highly recommend you go check that out. It gives a really good look at why Chattanooga is the freight capital of the U.S. And they started their tour in our headquarters in King Street.
So, yeah.
If you want to get a little bit of a preview of what all that looks like, go check out that video and tell them Shifting Gears sent you. We'll be moving on now to things that are less about us, I guess. So we're gonna be looking at, we're coming towards, what are we, like halfway through Q2? Something like that. Yeah. So
almost exactly. It's the 16th.
Yeah, that's right. So
17th.
Something like 17th. Yeah. So we're coming up on the second half of 2023, and wow, that was fast. I didn't even think about that. The first half of 2023 was, I think the story of it, at least from a freight market perspective, was this looming recession. How is it going to affect freight? Is it going to slow down? Are people going to be shifting their spending habits? Are imports and exports going to slow down? And the answer is yes to all of those.
Yeah, I think we saw, the tip of the iceberg that left us with a lot of questions out of fear, right? Like we started seeing some of those light impacts and we were seeing the beginning, and it was, how bad is it going to be?
Yeah. So, the worst hasn't come true yet necessarily. It hasn't been good, right? But it hasn't been as bad as somebody might have thought, back in February or March when it was really bleak. So as we approach the second half of 2023, there were some surveys sent out to supply chain professionals, and the top three things that they were worried about as the second half approaches is the possibility of a U.S. recession. That was the concern in the first half too. Geopolitical risks and rising operating costs. So of those three things, I'm not really sure which one's coming true yet, but I mean, I would imagine that recession is on the way, but the rising operating costs, that's already happened. We're seeing plenty of that already. Let's see here. The results showed that 49% of those who were surveyed fear a recession in the U.S. as their main key concern. Second place was the geopolitical tensions with 32%, and operating costs was 22%. After that, it drops down pretty far. Fourth on that list was labor strikes, and that could creep its way into the top three.
Yeah, I have a feeling we saw a glimpse of that, right? And a lot of the concerns were voiced out loud, but I think there is a huge power dynamic with labor strikes. And depending on how some of these other items kind of shake out, I think we could potentially see some devastating impacts. I mean, we've already seen the layoffs, so operating costs have already kind of come to fruition. We've already seen what that will turn into. I do think that there is a chance, depending on what happens over the next 4 months, we could see some labor strikes.
Honestly, I'm guessing because you could name almost any company right now, and there's probably something going on in the background.
Sure, yeah. There's drama everywhere.
There's going to be drama everywhere, especially in a year like this. Let's see here. Some of the other things of note were declining freight rates. We've seen that one definitely by far. I mean, some of those rates have bottomed out over the past few months. Certainly different because I was in the freight brokering business last year. And I don't know how I would be able to do it this year. It was a lot easier last year. I'll leave it at that. And then at 3%, this is interesting that it's not in labor strikes, but I guess I see why it's not. Port operation disruptions. I think that is also labor strikes, but that could also just be things like like embargoes against China, like stuff like that, like just
well, global trade is really rocky right now.
Global trade, yeah.
I mean, and there's always something happening with global trade, but as our policies are changing and we're looking at policy changes of other countries, and then we're looking at import export policies, you know, there's so many moving factors. I'm surprised it's not more than 3%, honestly.
It could rise too.
I think that those concerns, especially with an election coming up, we might see more of that in 2024.
Yeah. So those are some of the big things that we got to worry about there. I mean, on the subject of geopolitical tensions, that's something that's always going to be a problem. But you know, some of the hot points are still, you know, Russia and Ukraine. That has not really stopped. The diesel prices, thankfully, have come down.
Yeah.
But that's really one of the only things
it's one of the only positives
we
have to give you today.
It's one of the only positives that has come from all of that. So global trade itself could be impacted because of the country's dependencies on investments made over the recent decades, like by China, for example. We've made a lot of investments into China, and now we're just sort of cutting it off. So that's going to be a problem. Just a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
It's a lot going on. So it's going to be a very interesting thing to see how people are able to navigate the second half of 2023, what they've learned in the first half, how they shift their strategies from what the last 2 years of assuming it's going to be a booming business to now trying to preserve what you have and keep things, you know, locked up long term. So good luck to everybody out there, because the second half, if it's anything like the first one, you know, buckle up. Yeah, because we're going to be in for a long ride.
Yeah, I feel like there's predictability based off of past experiences, and you know, history truly does repeat itself.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a little unpredictable on how it's going to repeat itself and to what magnitude. So yeah, buckle up, kitty cats. On a lighter note, so
finally,
Apple, yes, Apple has a new accessibility update, a feature that's going to be added, and it's called Personal Voice. So this one is really sweet. It's geared towards, it was inspired by ALS and the difficulties that come along with the progression of ALS. So Personal Voice is a way for people who are at risk of losing their ability to speak to create and save a voice that sounds like them. So basically what that means is in the future, you can then prompt voice messages, calls, FaceTimes, things like that have a voice that sound like yours or a loved one of yours. So, you know, I think that this is a way to use technology for good. Sometimes we get a little afraid of what's next, and sometimes, you know, Apple just kind of makes things a little bit more difficult with like changing the ports for charging and earbud accessibility. Things like that have been a little questionable, but I am a diehard Apple user, and so seeing things like this gives me a lot of hope. I think it was a good move on the part of the company, and I think that we're starting to see, honestly, some of that inclusion, that diversity and equality, you know, those DEI movements that we really lean towards in a social culture, being integrated into technology that's so widely used. I love it. I'm here for this change.
Well, just to show where my head was when I read the headline. Now, just forget everything that was just said here and just focus on the headline, okay? Apple's new personal voice feature can create a voice that sounds like you or a loved one in just 15 minutes.
Creepy.
Do you know how much fraud?
Sounds creepy.
My first thought was, fraud.
Yeah.
A lot of fraud. And that was the angle I was going to take on the story until I started reading it. And I was like, well, it's good that they're
and then it pulls at your heartstrings.
And then it makes you feel bad for thinking that people are evil, you know? I mean, I like that, you know, obviously if it is used the way that it's being advertised, the way that it's intended, fantastic. If I know anything about people, it probably won't be used for
people will take it and run with it in a different way. So while I personally love this, I think it's a wonderful and valiant effort. I am interested to see what happens. It's kind of like those, you know, the service robots.
Yeah.
It's great in theory. We'll see how it pans out, but kudos to the product managers and, you know, the software engineers at Apple for making something like this happen.
Yeah, that's really good to hear that they're doing something nice like that. Well, I'm gonna completely shift gears on you here. Hey,
well, we are on shifting gears.
Whitney, when was the last time you went to a movie theater?
Not that long ago, like maybe
Really?
6 months.
6 months? Okay, it's probably been about a year for me or so. What were the snack prices like? Do you remember they're super expensive still? Like more expensive than normal?
I sneak in my own snacks.
That's what I'm getting to.
So
All right.
I don't know.
Good. Okay, good. You played the game correctly. That's good. So AMC, the movie theaters, they are shifting away from basically buying their own candy and selling it. So you're not going to have any like Hershey's, M&Ms, Snow Caps.
They're getting rid of their concession stands?
They're replacing them, right? So they're still going to have concession stands. They're making their own snacks now. So AMC snacks, right? So they're going to have like their own generic brand, gummy worms and chocolates.
Oh,
and stuff
I wouldn't
like
buy their brand. I would stick with the brands that I know.
Oh yeah, no,
But if they're doing like AMC, like ice cream sundaes, that's a different conversation.
Well, that's bougie. From what kind of movie theaters you're going to?
Con with ice cream sundaes.
Yeah, apparently. So this is the result of this is one of the lasting effects of the pandemic and its effects on the supply chain as well. This is a quote from the chairman and CEO of AMC, Adam Aron. He says, we noticed recently as a result of the pandemic and the supply chain shortages that candy manufacturers had increased their price to us by a huge amount. I don't know exactly what the huge amount is. Oh, there it is. Yeah, 33%. So prices went up 33% because of supply chain issues and pandemic-related operating costs. AMC said, as a way to sort of combat this, is they're going to manufacture private label of popular candies. So basically just like generic Reese's, stuff like that.
I get cookie dough bites.
Cookie dough bites, that's a good one. I like the chocolate, like almonds, chocolate peanuts.
Okay,
what are those called? Oh, they're called goobers.
Yeah, I like the goobers.
Goobers. Imagine trying to order goobers with a straight face.
I'm old though, and I will get chocolate covered raisins, and that is a very unpopular opinion. But
that's gross. So they're going to be selling it all at a lower price, obviously, and it also costs less for them to make their own. It's funny that it actually costs less for them to make their own than it does to just order from some of the more popular brands. So AMC themselves, even at the lower prices, they're still going to maintain a higher profit margin just because of the cost to manufacture. The private label brand is so much less than the normal brands. So the entertainment company, AMC, expects to introduce this stuff by basically this time next year. Like they want it to be either later this year or early 2024. Yeah, so by next year we might have some AMC candy going on there. But it's probably not going to matter for people like me and you because we're just going to bring our own in anyway.
Yeah.
So good on them for trying, but we're still gonna. I mean,
I brought in a whole half of a pizza before.
You what?
Yeah.
I brought in McDonald's
purses
before.
Are big.
I've brought in like a Happy Meal before. When I was like 7 or 8, my mom took me to McDonald's before a movie, and like
back when they came in the cardboard boxes.
Yeah, a little cardboard box, and she just put it in her giant purse, and we walked in. It just smelled like fries. Like she wasn't fooling anybody, I promise. And we get in there, and I'm just eating my cheeseburger, watching like Monsters Inc. or something. Like,
love it.
Good times, good old movie theaters. But Wendy, bring us on home. What you got?
A Florida man.
Yes.
Y'all are back in Florida. No, this is a good story. Okay. This is impressive. So Joseph, I believe his last name is Jachuri, is how you say it.
Sure.
He's a 55-year-old professor at the University of South Florida. Mm-hmm. He was a former dive officer in the Navy, has broken a world record. Can you guess what that is?
Is it diving related?
It is, somewhat.
The highest dive while wearing no clothes. Wait, did I get it?
No.
Oh.
Very far off.
Oh, man.
So, he has broken the record for the longest time living underwater.
Living?
Yeah. So, he's an aquanaut, is what they are called. Yes.
I like it.
There's your new term for the day. So currently this record was held by 2 educators from Tennessee. In 2014. They were underwater for 73 days. So Joseph has been underwater now for 77 days. And he's basically studying, how the human body reacts under extreme conditions. So he is living as normal of a life as he can. He's got his frozen food. He's got like a small little kitchenette down there.
Is he like in a giant like underwater room? How does this work?
Yeah, we'll put a picture of it right
here.
So he is also being checked in on regularly by a medical staff just to make sure that he's doing okay. His mental health is intact. We're doing fine underwater. Right now, he's been under there, like I said, 77 days. So he's hoping to span about 3 more weeks. His goal is to hit 100 days underwater. If he does that, that means he'll be resurfacing on June 9th.
Does it say why he's doing this?
Yeah, he wants to study how the human body reacts under extreme conditions. He's just, because he was a dive officer, he just has this fascination of, human psychology, how we behave, how we respond. And what better way to do that than to dive to the depths and just exist
I
for
can give him
days.
the answer without diving. It's scary.
Yeah, he said the biggest, from what I read, the biggest change that he's had to adapt to is the lack of light.
Well, yeah, I can see that. Oh man, his eyes are going to be something when he gets out of the water.
It would be a weird adjustment coming back.
Yeah.
My legs hurt after 4 hours of driving. I couldn't imagine 100 days underwater and my eyes trying to reorient.
He's alone down there, but people are checking on him, but he's alone?
Yeah.
He's
regularly checking in and sending updates and things like that. So he's being pretty communicative. I don't know.
Underwater Wi-Fi?
I don't know. I hope he's watching Animal Planet if he is.
Blue Planet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Just checking in.
Yeah, I would go crazy. I mean, I'm already claustrophobic as it is, and then you put me underwater.
He seems very happy. From what I've seen, he is enjoying this experience.
Who am I
he's accomplishing a goal, and he broke a world record while he's at it. So, yeah. Good job, Joseph. Best of luck to you. I hope that we hear back from you on June 9th and you've accomplished your goal.
Well, that's the thing. We have to make sure. So we're going to be updating this story on June 9th.
Yeah, we'll circle back around in 3 to 4 weeks with an update on his progress.
Fantastic. Well, until then, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.